Joining us now is Texas Congressman and House DOJ Subcommittee member Brandon Gill. Congressman, good to see you. What can you tell us about the meeting?
Well, thanks for having me on, Maria. I can tell you that we are working really hard on the DOJ subcommittee to work with Elon Musk in tandem to actually cut out waste, fraud, and abuse from the federal government. But zooming out a little bit, one of the things that I took away from the meeting with Elon Musk is that what he is doing and what we are doing on the DOJ subcommittee and what President Trump is doing to cut out this waste will go down in history books as the largest right-sizing of government ever in all of history anywhere. Our children and our children's children will read about the billions of dollars that were being plundered from the American people, how President Trump inherited a failing government that was running deficits to the tune of $2 trillion every single year, how our children's inheritance was being despoiled by a bureaucratic incompetency and at times malice, and how President Trump stood in the gap, brought in one of the smartest people in the world to solve this crisis, and courageously, with yielding attacks from the left, incessantly solved this crisis. We're just beginning, but the kinds of things that he is uncovering, that we are uncovering in the DOJ subcommittee is absolutely egregious, but we are working night and day nonstop to get our government back on a track that is economically and fiscally sustainable.
Tiana, jump in.
How will we see what you on the DOJ committee and Elon's project more broadly, finding all this fraud, finding these line items of tens of billions of dollars that could be cut out? How will that play into the next government funding vote, but also ultimately that extension of Trump's 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? Will there be some savings there that will enable the president to, let's say, get no tax on tips done? Because we know that will cost a pretty penny.
Well, first of all, we're only at the early stages of what the DOJ movement is doing. President Trump's only been in office, remember, for 40 days, so Elon Musk has only just begun this process. I think that we are going to find an enormous amount of savings. Elon has talked about $1 trillion a year in waste that he thinks he can find. That's $4 billion of your tax dollars every single day that is being wasted. The kind of ineptitude that he's uncovering is staggering. We're talking about the Department of Labor not even owning its own data. We're talking about government agencies that are not communicating with each other. It's an ineptitude that's hard to fathom. But where we're going to use these savings, we'll see how quickly we can get these rolled out. I think that the first step here is to give the president and Elon Musk room to breathe here. So I think that we will be able to get this into the budget. We will be able to right-size the government. But right now we need to continue doubling down and tripling down on the work that Elon Musk is doing.
So, I mean, the work that Elon Musk is doing has obviously been very important and a surprise to many people, particularly all those people in the Social Security rolls who are over 100 years old. It's just absolutely unacceptable. But you're going to have to really cut more than, just waste, fraud, and abuse to actually pay for what you are talking about in President Trump's agenda. Can you identify some offsets here in terms of what you're looking at in this reconciliation package?
Yeah, so we're looking at $4 to $4.5 trillion worth of tax cuts, perhaps more, and that's being offset by a mixture of economic growth, which, as you know, tax cuts stimulate the economy. These are very pro-growth, as well as at least $1.5 trillion of spending cuts. And let me tell you, you get $800 billion right off the bat from repealing the Green New Deal. That's something that Republicans have run on. That's half your spending cuts right there. What we've been seeing with DOJ, and this is something that we will be cycling into this, is, like I said, $4 billion every single day in savings. We have been seeing savings across the board, repealing welfare for illegal aliens, going after some of the most egregious forms of waste and uses of our taxpayer dollars. So, frankly, Maria, I don't think that we're going to have a problem finding offsets for these tax cuts.
Congressman, I mean, with all due respect, you haven't given me one offset. Okay. You say that you're not going to have a problem finding an offset. And so far, all I've heard you talk about is Elon Musk's fraud, waste, and abuse cuts, as well as eliminating climate change rules. Again, 76% of the money is going to mandatory spending. You know that better than anyone. I've got the numbers in front of me. You've got $36 trillion in debt. Isn't it time to start looking at the mandatory spending and trying to figure out how you're actually going to cut? I mean, I know nobody wants to say this, but you've got to cut stuff like Medicaid, don't you?
Well, listen, I actually did just give you an offset. I gave you $800 billion for over a 10-year window for Green New Deal subsidies that directly impacts the reconciliation process. We've got about another $100 billion related to welfare for illegal aliens. I agree with you. We are going to have to find some rationalizations. And Medicaid, for instance, job requirements for welfare. So there's a slew of offsets that we have in this reconciliation package that we're going to be looking through. These are the details we're working through right now. We've only just given the instructions to the various committees, but I just gave you about about $1 trillion worth of offsets right off the top of my head here.
Well, $1 trillion in offsets, but you got $4.5 trillion that you need to pay for in tax cuts.
We've got $1.5 trillion of spending cuts that are per the reconciliation instructions, and then we've underwritten $2.5 trillion worth of economic growth that comes from these tax cuts.
Yep.
As you know, whenever you reduce the individual income tax rate, the corporate tax rate, that is very positive that is stimulating economic growth. So you have a significant amount of offsets right there.
Unfortunately, the Atlanta GDP is expecting a contraction in the first quarter, not growth.
Well, listen, there are various GDP measures, and what we've done on the committee is we're not taking CBO's numbers. We're not taking necessarily any particular outside groups. We're doing our own analysis here, and we've underwritten about a 2.6% GDP growth, which is consistent and I think conservative relative to historical averages. All
right. Brandon Gill, we appreciate your work. We're watching your work. You're on the Budget Committee, and it's important work. So thanks very much for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Congressman, we'll see you soon. We'll be right back.